Hello, Tampa Bay fans. You're listening to The William Haynes Show, your online radio home for Tampa Bay sports talk and Rays postgame shows. Stay tuned throughout baseball season for live coverage after most Rays games with comprehensive coverage of all 162 games from April through October. Got something to say? We'd love to hear it. Give us a call, internationally toll-free. 877-566-1020 or send us a tweet at WHBC Official. Don't go anywhere. Tonight's program will be starting in just a couple of minutes.
HBC. Back-to-back losses in one-run games. Who do the Rays think they are? It is a good evening to you and how you be. William Haynes here, you there, here at 10:15 on this Monday night. This Rays postgame edition is live from the WHBC studio in Tallahassee, Florida. Number to call the show and talk Rays, 877-566-1020 with you for about an hour tonight, talking tonight's 2-1 loss at the hands of the Oakland Athletics. The A's have now won 14 of their last 15 games, so it is a little bit difficult to be too upset with what Oakland did, which was come away with a 2-1 win. Oakland, is now 5-0 in one-run games. And I believe the Rays are now something along the lines of 2-4 in one-run games, which is very uncharacteristic of them. The Rays now drop back under 500. They are now at 11-12, and the Oakland Athletics, which came into this series an American League best, 14-8, improved to 15-8 on the season. They are now 7-2 on the road as well. So a loss to open up a 4-game series against not just the first-place team in the American League West, but also the best team in the AL as a whole is definitely not off to a good start. I would say, obviously, the one bright spot of the game was that you had your number 4 starter in Rich Hill and your B bullpen in Lewis Head and Hunter Strickland pitching for the Rays tonight, and you hold, again, the best team in the American League to just 2 runs over 9 innings. So that was good to see. Certainly, I think anyone would agree that this was Rich Hill's best start or best appearance of the season so far. He does end up getting the loss, but he gives up just 2 runs on 2 hits over his 6 innings of work, 2 walks, and you throw in 2 hit by pitches in there as well. But I think a season-high 10 strikeouts, his 17th career game with 10 strikeouts, and of course that 1 home run allowed to Sean Murphy in the 4th inning that ultimately did the Rays in, threw a season-high 93 pitches as well. I think we can all agree that we would like to see more of that from Rich Hill moving down the line, considering his last start at Kansas City, he pitched just 2+ and allowed, I think, 4 to 6 runs in that appearance and really left the Rays in a bad spot in that game in a contest they ultimately went on to lose. So, if the back of the rotation, maybe Rich Hill and Michael Wacha, who has been good of late, maybe if they start coming to form, I think this Rays team, although the 11-12 record, and this is their worst start to a season since 2018, where I believe they started somewhere along the lines of 10-18, and although they ultimately went on to win 90 games that year. But You would say offensively this team is lacking identity, but as far as the pitching and the defense, I think some of the very early season concerns are being put to rest just a little bit. By no means does this mean, 41-year-old Rich Hill has completely turned the corner on the season, but again, any team that wins 13 straight games, their offense knows how to hit and hit in timely situations, and so that he was able to hold that lineup of all teams to just 2 runs over 6 innings is certainly a bright spot. I think you want to look at maybe a microcosm of Rich Hill's performance. Matt Olson, the number 3 hitter in the A's lineup, who came into tonight, I think, hitting .315 and a team lead 6 home runs, and he strikes him out 3 times in 3 at-bats against him. I think that really gives you a good idea of what Rich Hill was doing out there tonight. It seems like he maybe took a little bit of velocity off the fastballs. I was seeing more 84, 85, 86, not as many, high 80s or even a couple of 90-mile-an-hour fastballs that we've seen from him early in the season. I'm sure that's by design. There was also conversation from Hill going into the game that he believed he was maybe tipping some pitches a little bit with runners on second base, and I think maybe clean that up a little bit. He only had 1 runner on second base the whole game, and it was Ramon Laureano who ended up getting caught stealing at third. So maybe you say that he's fixed that issue. So that was good to see. And of course, the offense, who in their 3-game weekend series against the Blue Jays hit for just 2 of 19 with runners in scoring position, put out an 0 for 5 performance in that category tonight and leave a total of 8 base runners. And it seemed that the big moments were catching the same guys. Austin Meadows and Manuel Margot both go 0 for 2 with runners in scoring position on the night, and Francisco Mejia making the final out, going 0 for 1, and he had a couple of pinch hit at-bats. And Kevin Cash was certainly aggressive with the late-game moves. I don't have, at least offensively, I don't have a problem with any of the moves that were made. You could have, I understand righty-lefty. I honestly would have pinch hit for Brandon Lau in the 9th inning over Brasso, but, it ultimately did not end up making much of a difference. And he went with the B bullpen behind Rich Hill tonight. And the A bullpen is rested, but there is still a lot of baseball left to be played in this homestand without an off day. And Diego Castillo has still not pitched since last Wednesday. He's been off the IL, and he did a little bit of a pregame spot, I guess, in the Zoom room, did Diego Castillo, just saying that he feels fine after taking the vaccine a handful of days ago. But maybe some questions arise as he still has not pitched at this point in about almost a week. So I think even if it's not a close game, you have to just get him some game action, because sometimes those relievers can get a little bit rusty if you don't see them come into the game very much. Randy Arozarena in the leadoff spot. I know that's probably kind of the A storyline coming away from tonight on the offensive end. Kevin Cash mixing up the lineup a great deal tonight. They had only had 3 different leadoff hitters going into tonight. Yandy Diaz had done it 8 times, and both Austin Meadows and Yoshi Tsutsugo had done it 7 times each. And so he moves Randy up to the 1 spot, and it ultimately ends up paying off as he goes 3 for 4 and gets his average back over 300. So as much as we've maybe bellyached about Arozarena's performance, I don't think you can really complain about what he's doing right now. He is striking out about a third of the time, and he is right at the top of the American League in ground ball percentage. So a little bit of a rigid player as far as kind of his offensive outcomes, but it seems to be working for him with a 301 average, 356 on base, and a 446 slugging. And I honestly would keep him in the leadoff spot. There's no real great place for Yandy Diaz right now, but you saw it multiple times tonight where Randy Arozarena hits a single, and then Yandy Diaz walks to push Randy to second base. And I guess you could say it would work the opposite way also, with Yandy walking and then maybe Randy singling behind him. I think the lineup was just fine tonight, and Brandon Lau also was down all the way to the 6th spot after being relegated to the 5-hole last night. So until he gets things figured out, with an 0 for 4 and 2 strikeout performance for Lau, and his average is now down to 158. I think you got to continue to bat him down there in the order until things change. So that was about it. I I understand and I appreciate what Cash is trying to do with the order. This was their 23rd unique lineup in as many games. Obviously not repeating the lineup yet this year. And why would you use the same lineup? Because it doesn't really seem like anything has quite worked, at least moving from one day to the next. It seems like maybe when you think they've found perhaps lightning in a bottle, and then the guys that you were really leaning on, say a Joey Wendell or a Manuel Margot, they go into a bit of a slump, and then you're in a place where, okay, well, we can't bat him at the 3 or 4 spot anymore, and we've got to move him down. Well, who do you bring up to the top of the order? Because we really haven't had anyone who's been performing, I guess you would say, exceptionally consistent. So that's where we stand right now. And as far as the American League East standings are concerned, the only teams that played today was the Yankees and Orioles, and they played each other. The Orioles coming out on top with a 4-2 win. And shout out to Matt Harvey, the Dark Knight, getting, I think, 6 innings of 1 run allowed against New York, which is incredible. But with Boston off today, the Rays' loss drops them to second. Well, they're still in second place, and they're now 3 games back of first, which is the Boston Red Sox at 14-9. The Rays should be, they are lucky. They are fortunate that no one really in the AL East has found their footing yet and has really gotten off to a good start, because if that was the case, the Rays would find themselves behind, 5 to even 8 games this early in a hurry. So the fact that the Red Sox are 5 games above 500, but the fact that I think the favorites, along with the Rays, really the big 3 in this division, the Rays, the Blue Jays, and the Yankees, well, Toronto and New York has not found their footing yet either. So it's okay right now, but the Rays need to get their act together in a hurry, or else they're going to find themselves at the bottom of the division with the blink of an eye. So that's the point that I'm trying to make. And with 3 games left against the Athletics, is not really going to get any easier. You would say perhaps that the starting pitching would be in the Rays' favor, as it's going to be Walker tomorrow, Glass now the following day, and it looks like maybe Yarbrough behind an opener the day after that. But the Athletics staff is certainly not comprised of slumps either. So, that's another thing too, is we bellyache about what this lineup is doing, and yes, they do need to perform better, but I mean, look at who they've been playing lately. The Blue Jays staff, who they just came off a series loss against, who they have really been surpassing expectations. Ryu and Mats more so, and it seemed like the Royal staff was putting together some pretty good starts, and they're still in first place in the AL Central. So the only teams they've been mashing against, mostly the Yankees, their pitching staff is not very good. So maybe this is just going to be one of those years where you just have to beat the bad teams that you play, and maybe you're under 500 against the better teams, and so be it. It's a long season. But they are going to have to start thinking about stacking wins somewhere, because it seems like they're kind of sputtering in maybe first or second gear, as it were. So at this point, we're going to take a quick commercial break. We would love to hear from you, and maybe have some of you folks call in and share your thoughts about the Rays if you'd like to do so. And we do have a line open. It is 877-566-1020. We'll take a short break and allow for some calls to roll in. So in the meantime, don't go anywhere.
You're listening to the Rays postgame on the William Haynes Show. We're live most nights within 15 minutes of the final out to break down everything that happened in that day's game and take listener phone calls to get your thoughts. As always, you call the show at 877-566-1020 or tweet the show at WHBC Official. Like you to remember that archives of previous shows can be found on this show's page on Speaker.com and also on the WHBC YouTube channel. We look forward to having some of you on the show. Thanks for calling in.
HBC. And at 10:28, we return on the William Haynes Show, this race post-game edition of the William Haynes Show, as we continue our discussion of tonight's 2-1 loss at home at the hands of the Oakland A's. If you'd like to call in and share your thoughts about tonight's game, we would certainly welcome that. The number to call is 877-566-1020, with you for another 45 minutes or so. Towards the end of the program, we'll talk about some of the injuries that the Rays have, and it looks like the outlook is positive on some guys coming back, and we'll also preview tomorrow's game at the end of the show also, so be sure to stick around for that. But, of course, we have to discuss what's in front of us, and that is a 2-1 loss in 2 hours and 51 minutes, and in front of a paid attendance of just 2,981 at Tropicana Field. It was the Oakland A's improving to 15-8, and dropping the Rays back under 500 to 11-12. For the A's, it was 2 runs on just 3 hits, no errors defensively for them, and they were pretty clean on defense, certainly. And for the Rays, just the 1 run on 6 hits, so they double the A's in hits, but fall short in the run category, and no errors for them either. And as we mentioned, the Rays continue to be playing their plus defense behind a pitching staff that I think is really coming into their own. So now it's pretty much just on the offense. You know, all they had to do was score 3 runs tonight. But I understand things lined up pretty well for Oakland as far as their pitching. So they're first place in the American League for a reason, and they showed it tonight. So getting the win, it was Sean Manaea, who the Rays had last seen in the 2019 American League wildcard game. He goes 5 innings, allowing just 1 run. He improves to 3-1 on the season. Lou Trevino for the A's gets his 3rd save of the year, and taking the loss in 6 innings of work, just 2 runs allowed. It is Rich Hill getting the loss, his first of the season. He is now 1-1 on the year. And for the lineup that Kevin Cash submitted, it was a different lineup for sure compared to what we've seen recently. And as I mentioned earlier, the 23rd unique lineup used in just 23 games this season, so they have not recycled the lineup yet this season. Defense first in the outfield from left to right, it was in left field. It was Austin Meadows, Manny Margot in center, Randy Arozarena in right, and then in the infield from third to first, Joey Wendell at third base, Willie Adames at shortstop, Mike Brasso played second, Yandy Diaz played first, Mike Zunino did the catching, and it was Brandon Lau DHing. So they continue to, or no, they don't. They have Mike Zunino pitch on, or no, I was right the first time. So they continue to flip-flop on the catchers. Mike Zunino plays one day, Frankie Mejia plays the next, and then back to Zunino we were tonight. Out of Rich Hill's first 4 starts, 3 of them had been caught by Zunino, so it seems like maybe that's a tandem that they like. A lot had been made of Mejia. He's now caught all of the staff, and as they try to maybe look to use him a little bit more, we thought maybe we'd see him once or twice a week, but now we're talking maybe 3 or 4 times, as the workload between the 2 backstops could be split 50-50. They used the DH on Brandon Lau, which I thought maybe a little bit curious. The only thing he's really been provided to the team right now is his defense, but they decided to have Mikey Brasso at second, and everything else kind of was chalk as to what we expected a little bit. They give Kevin Kiermaier the day off as well, which was not something we had really anticipated, but something certainly to keep in mind, as everyone needs a day off every now and again. And Manny Margot, who obviously against a left-handed starter is going to be your option in center, the righty bat, and then they go the 2 regulars in the corners with Meadows in left and Arozarena in right. Yandy Diaz playing at first base. I thought if he was going to be in the lineup at all, it would be as a DH, but I very much expected him to be getting the day off after taking a pitch off of his wrist, and he was in a lot of pain after that. Of course, he stayed in the game, and it looks like all is fine. There was no broken bones or anything like that, so he stayed in the lineup and played defense as well. Thought he did a fine job over at third base, and like I said, everything was pretty much as expected. Joey Wendell playing third base, and he's been obviously the most used player at that position so far this season. And where it got a little bit unexpected was the order in which all these guys hit. So the way the lineup shook out, it was Randy Arozarena leading off for the first time this year, and probably maybe his first time leading off as a Ray, but certainly not very often he's done it. Yandy Diaz batting second, Austin Meadows third, Manuel Margot did the cleanup, hitting Mike Brasso fifth, Brandon Lau all the way down to the 6th spot, the lowest he's hit this season, and then a 7.89 of Mike Zunino, Willie Adames, and Joey Wendell. So obviously a lot of changes there, and that was a big discussion during tonight's game. And I honestly like the way that this lineup shook out. They want to change things in the leadoff spot. They have not really found, I guess, anything that's worked. They've used only 3 guys there this season. Yandy Diaz leading off the most 8 times this season, and then Meadows and Tsutsugo in the leadoff spot 7 times each. And we do have a call now, so we are going to go to the phones. And we have Seth calling from Los Angeles. Seth, you're on the William Haynes Show. What can you say tonight?
Well, good to hear from you, Will. I don't usually call in on days when we lose, but I'm annoyed enough by this loss that I feel like I need to. I'm very annoyed. Rich Hill finally pitched good. Finally had a great game, and we do this. I'm gonna lose my mind.
That's the thing that's so frustrating, and that's what I mentioned earlier, is that I think the pitching and defense is really at Rays' expectations, and they've really wasted some great performances. The offense has just been inept the last handful of days.
Yeah, they can't seem to get a clutch hit to save their lives. Can't even get a clutch sac fly. I mean, I thought the Dodgers played some bad baseball last night, which they did. They played some utterly horrific baseball, but I think we might have been worse. I mean, you have a tailor-made opportunity in the 8th inning to tie the game with pretty much anything. Runners on 2nd and 3rd. You're going to tie the game with a ground out. And what does Meadows do? The one thing that doesn't tie the game, which is pop out. I mean, that's just terrible baseball, dude. Like, at least try and get a little bit of a barrel on it. I mean, and then the last inning was just kind of a clown show. I mean, both on the umpiring crew's part, that called strike to Kiermaier was horrible.
Absolutely.
He walks. Let's say for the sake of argument, he walks. Let's play this out. If he walks, the next contact was from Lau. It was up the middle. It was like to the second baseman. KK's probably running on contact if he hasn't stolen the base already. I think he probably makes it. I don't think he gets a double play there. I think he probably was running on contact, or he would have already stolen the base. So then you got him on second. Yoshi's single probably gets him in, tie game. I mean, that's terrible. Like, that shouldn't have happened. But I mean, you can't really blame the umpire in this case. You could certainly blame him for yesterday. The umpiring crew yesterday is horrible. Scorecard on Twitter gave him a .59 run expectancy to Toronto. In other words, if you round up, that's 1 run. They won by 1 run. So the umpiring crew yesterday was awful. Today was almost as bad. But you really can't blame them for this. Like, this one was absolutely on the offense, 100%. And if they can't get something again, I was just talking to my father, and I was trying to talk to people on Discord about it, but they're awfully depressed right about now, so they're posting Kool-Aid Man memes. But I was saying, I mean, I think we got to light a fire under some butts. I think you got to make these guys afraid for their jobs. I'm going to be honest. Like, Lau is hitting so badly at this point that I think, let's say Brujan gets off to a crazy start in the minor leagues, and he's hitting 400. They should call him up. Call him up in May. Do like a Soto-style call-up. Make Lau worry about his job. He should be. If he keeps hitting 160, he should be worried about his job. I don't care what kind of contract he has. That's pathetic. He's supposed to be a big hitter. He's supposed to be team MVP, and he's been doing this since probably somewhere around September of last year. He's been hitting like crap. So, I mean, excuse my language, but you see my point. Like, this is, it's the kind of thing. Walls, same thing for Willie. I mean, I'm not saying call up Wander. That seems like kind of a bad idea as of right now. But, Walls, certainly, he's probably about ready to the point where you could probably call him up if he gets off to a hot start. Make Willie a little bit nervous. I mean, it just feels to me like some of these guys need to have competition. They seem complacent. They seem lost at the plate. It kind of makes me feel as though they need to really light a fire in them, and I think one of the ways of doing that would be making them actually worry they might lose their job.
Yeah, I'm not always in favor of that, but I think for a couple guys, you may have a good point. I know Kevin Cash, the way he handles that, he likes to show confidence in guys and have them come up in big moments, and so far, obviously, that's backfired. With the AAA a week away, I mean, Brujan, we're not going to know for him for quite a while, but in the meantime, and a guy that you've been really carrying the water for, maybe you just make Brasso the everyday second baseman for the next week or so and see how that goes and keep Wendell over at third. And because right now, Lau, you're right. I mean, he's not giving the Rays anything. He's batting 158 right now. He's showing no sign of being able to get out of the slump, and he really performed badly when the Rays needed him most last year. So it's a tough spot with him right now.
See, yeah, I would say, oh yeah, I'm carrying the water for Bros. Have him start second base. Yeah, Bros isn't just as bad of a slump as Lau. I hate to break it to you. Like he's about there. I mean, he was 0 for on the night. Just didn't look good at the plate all night. I mean, he had a pretty horrible call go against him at one point tonight. So I don't know maybe if he gets full blame for that, but he didn't look so hot tonight either. So I'm not, and he hasn't looked very good for most of the last 2 games he's been playing. The only game that he really came up big in was the game where he hit the 2-run homer Saturday, which that he absolutely came up big there, and I credit him for that. But other than that, he's been quiet as a church mouse. So I don't know if even he's the answer. It's starting to make me think we got to go outside. Like, we got to look for outside help.
The one thing I like about Brasso, and I think that really this is the only thing this lineup can do right now, is even when Brasso's striking out, he's working tremendous at bats. I cannot say the same for Lau right now. So that would be the only thing that I would say on that. And
you're right.
We've seen guys turn it around a little bit. Like, obviously, Randy put in a great performance tonight. Yandy's been working good at bats. But, yeah, you look at some of those guys that going into the season are kind of the guys that you need to succeed. Lau and Meadows both, and Willie in there as well, are just working just crummy at bats.
Currently, the best players on the team, and I don't think anybody could have predicted this. Sure, Randy, 100%. You could not have told me in a million years that Yandy was going to be one of the better players on the team right now. Could not have told me that in a million years. Would not have expected it. But he's doing pretty well. I mean, you could not have told me in a million years that Mejia was going to be one of the best players. I mean, Mejia is currently our second best hitter in terms of average. Like, he's just about our second best. He made the last out tonight. I don't blame him for that. Got kind of jammed up. I wish he'd taken some more pitches. But, I mean, he made decent contact, just got a little jammed up. Can't really blame him. He's coming in off a pinch hit appearance. And then the last one is Zunino. Where the hell did this come from? Like, again, apologies for my little language there, but he's like, where did this come from? I mean, he's actually been pretty hot. I mean, he was 1 for 3 on the night with a single, and he's generally been performing pretty well. I mean, he homered in the game that we last won. So, and we wouldn't have won that game without his homer. So, if you had told me in, I don't know, let's say December, that right after the Snell trade, we'll say, that the 4 best players on our team in April would be Randy, Yandy, Mejia, and Zunino, I would have told you that you're insane and probably called the cops. I'd be like, we got somebody mentally disturbed running around. Like, that's crazy. I would not have expected that in a second. So, I mean, credit to all 4 of those guys for being good. Those 4 guys, like, they don't need to worry about their jobs. But everybody else, like, I'm kind of in the position of we need to start, thinking hard about, what we could be doing. We talked about this last time we were on, when I came on the air last. I think the Willie Adames experiment kind of needs to end at this point. I think the second he gets hot, like literally the second he gets hot, they should start shopping him, honestly. If he gets hot, if he starts posting good numbers this year, they need to start shopping into any team that will take him, because at this point we have too many good shortstops that are being blocked by him. Taylor Walls, Brujan in theory, Wander of course. There are all these shortstops that are being blocked by him, and he really can't perform at the Trop. I mean, the Trop is his absolute kryptonite, but lately he hasn't even been performing out of the Trop. So, I mean, I think kind of the second he gets hot, they need to be thinking about where they're going to be moving him to. Cincinnati, I think, is the prime option. They're pretty desperate for a shortstop at the moment. They are currently starting Eugenio Suarez at short, which is a joke. I mean,
right.
I think he's like a Gold Glove third baseman, and they're like, oh yeah, sure, let's move him over to short. So that's kind of a complete, nut house over there. But I think they're starting Moustakas at third. Yeah, it's a whole thing over there. So they're pretty desperate for a shortstop. Certainly at the deadline, I'm sure Willie would get some looks from them. There are a few other teams that are probably pretty desperate right now. Colorado's another one. I'm sure they're looking for something because they know Story has literally 1 foot out the door. Heck, he might even be gone at the trade deadline. So, they're probably looking for something. They just fired British today. I don't know if they fired him, but they didn't say that in so many words, but certainly the statement made me think that he was forced to resign, which is weird, seeing as he already completely botched the Arenado trade. Why wouldn't you fire him before that? But I digress. So, maybe them. I don't know. But he's one. Willie, as much as I love the guy, is getting to the point where his time in Tampa is literally ticking down as we speak. If he's not gone at the trade deadline, I would be absolutely stunned. The only instance I would say where that doesn't happen is if he doesn't get hot. If he just keeps being complete garbage for like the next, 3 or 4 months, then they might just DFA him. I don't even know if they're going to bother trading him if that happens.
I think the one thing maybe that's changed since the last time we spoke is that at that point we were thinking, okay, yeah, maybe trade him to the Reds and see if we can get one of their arms back. But with the way the pitching, talking about the way that the bullpen has looked and even the starting rotation coming into form, if you trade Willie right now or at the trade deadline, what exactly should the Rays be looking to get in return? Because I think, the system is as deep as it could be. I would honestly make the argument right now. I know the bat is still concerning, but with how good he is defensively, and I think he is such kind of a glue guy in the clubhouse, and he is kind of a staple right now, I would be just leaning towards just keep him, and whatever happens, happens. And because, like you said, I don't know exactly what they would get back from him anyway.
I'm still on the track of I think it would be foolish and complacent to say that our pitching has completely gelled yet. I think at this juncture we should definitely still be looking for arms if they're willing to give them up. The Maley, whatever his name is, the guy that's currently pitching against the Dodgers tonight, just got out of a bases-loaded jam in the first. I would be willing to look at him. I'd be willing to take bloody well anything for Willie at this point if they're offering it. I'm of the mindset of glue guy in the clubhouse doesn't always mean anything. Like, we have so many glue guys in the clubhouse. Here's my thing, man. Willie can stay if he fixes himself. He has to hit. He has to produce, because I know you bring up his defense, but I'm going to be honest with you. They say Walls is better.
I've heard the same.
He's projected to be a Gold Glove shortstop. Like, this is a guy that they're saying, he's got decent pop in his bat, but more importantly, he's got incredible range. Like, he's the guy that they've said might actually force Wander to third base. As good as Wander supposedly is at the shortstop position, I've heard reports that, certainly if the two of them come up at the same time and Walls really starts proving himself defensively, he might very well make it so Wander gets most of his reps at third. So, but that I assume, again, that all hinges upon Willie. It really depends. Yes, Willie is generally a good defensive shortstop. Is he always good? No. He made 3 or 4 errors this year already. Or maybe it was 6. It was a bunch. He's not at a low number. He did the same thing last year. He started off really slow in terms of defense. So, I don't know. I'm just pretty much at the end of my rope with him. I'm just tired of him not putting up good at bats. I'm tired of him kind of wasting good opportunities, And certainly I feel the exact same way about Lau. The only difference is Lau is under contract. So, and also I think Lau's ceiling is a lot higher. Say what you will about, the notion of trading Willie, but Willie's ceiling is not all that high in comparison to our other shortstops. They say that Wander is pretty much, generational talent in terms of ceiling. They say that Walls could have a higher ceiling too. So Lau's ceiling is MVP caliber. We've seen that last year, but he's so streaky that he may never reach it. But with these other guys, with Willie, his ceiling is nowhere near that. His ceiling is probably at most all-star caliber. So I'm of the position where if he gets hot, it might just be in our best interest to move him.
Yeah, I think where the Rays are at right now, obviously they've made it clear they're not in a hurry to do so. I know that they've got guys in the minors that are going to be playing shortstop at some point. Taylor Wallace, who you mentioned, yes, I have heard that they consider him to maybe be the best defender in their entire organization. He's 24 years old, and he's played half a season of Double-A, so it seems that he's probably polished defensively, but maybe he's got some work to do on the bat. I would also say I think Willie's ceiling, it's not that high. I think we're at Adames' ceiling. I don't think there's really, at 25 years old, I don't see him really developing any further. I think he's a 220 hitter at best, but unlike you, I am a little bit higher on his defense right now. And with the way they've looked, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's what they say. And I wouldn't want to remove the one thing that they've got going for them, which is the defense.
220 that was his ceiling. I'd be more inclined to be generous and give him 250 because that's about where he was in 2019. I think that was his peak. I think when in terms of ceiling, in terms of what we could expect from him in a really good season, would be about 250, 260 at the plate, 20 homers, decent, like decent to good defense, like generally good to maybe great depending on the time of year, and then like 260, 20 homers is pretty much what I would be looking at in terms of that. That's what I saw from him in 19, and he was decent in 18 too. So I think that's kind of what we're looking at. He was also, for the regular season last year, he wasn't terrible. Certainly in the postseason, he was pretty much a black hole at the plate, but everywhere else he was fine. So I think that's probably where I'm looking at it in terms of ceiling is where it is what I just said. So I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes. But I think that I agree with the notion of it ain't broke, don't fix it. But at what point do you cut bait on some of these guys? At what point do you just say we have prospects in the minors that could very well be better than all of them, and we're forcing them to languish down there because we've got, these guys that are kind of just locked into these positions. At what juncture do you say to yourself that, it's too much? I don't know. I don't really know.
I think another factor in all this, too, which we haven't really discussed, let's remember what organization we're talking about. Yes, the Rays probably know who they have at the minor league system, and they're well aware of their major league capabilities, but it's always about service time and not getting that clock started too early. So that's always something to keep in the back of the mind as well.
Yeah, and that's definitely a thought process, I'm sure, that's going on with some of these dudes. But at the same time, they seem to have been willing to throw service time to the wind when it comes to a few of them. Patino, why is he here? Yes, he played a fraction of the season with the Padres, like an unbelievably small number of games. But if he stays up for too long, you're going to hit that service time clock with him. So kind of seems like they're not really being all that cautious with service time as of late. Honeywell, same deal. If you keep calling him up and down over and over, you're going to hit his clock too. So Fleming is another one. Fleming kind of seems like he's going to be locked into the rotation at this juncture. Assuming that Archer comes back eventually, that experiment may very well not have worked out so hot. I guess we're going to find out. I still am kind of the position where I'd like to see Archer maybe transition into a bullpen role, maybe be like a tandem with Hill is still kind of where I'm at on there. He could have. If he had come in these, he could definitely have eaten some innings after Hill for sure, after as good of a start as this was. I don't know how much length he can actually give us. But Fleming kind of seems like he's locked in the rotation, so his service time clock is very much ticking. Given, a few more months, he's going to be pretty much started. So, at what point are we just going to do that with pitchers and not do that with the offense? I don't know.
That's a valid argument. Yeah, I think with some of the pitchers, I think, Honeywell, I don't know how much good more minor league time would do him. I would say right now Fleming is probably a finished product. Patino, yes, he probably could use some more time just because he pitched only as high as single A before getting the call to the bigs. But as far as I know, his appearance yesterday was off of the taxi squad, so that's not going to affect his minor league option years. So that's all I would say. Yes. I know with the way this team's offense is right now, and obviously that being the team weakness, I wonder if maybe they're kind of looking in the mirror and say, maybe to fix this issue, we should be a little more careful with some of our hitters down in the minor leagues and maybe make sure that they are 110% ready for big league baseball by the time we call them up, because we've seen, Willie and Jake Bauers in 2018, they got kind of early call-ups, and they certainly had struggles early on at the plate. So that's kind of the thought process for me, is maybe that's how they get the offense turned around, is just having polished young players coming up.
We do have to be careful what we wish for. I agree. Certainly Jake Bauers was a complete waste of time, really, in terms of, he came up for a year and then was immediately shipped off. So yeah, I would agree. Developing offense is probably critical, because I'm starting to sit here and wonder to myself, did Lau get enough time? Like the way he's been playing, did he spend enough time in the minors? I'm not so sure. Because he's playing like garbage right now. Whether or not he is in a deep, deep slump, the problem that I have is that he's been doing this since September of last year. There has been no change. There has been absolutely no change. He basically has turned into a 3 true outcomes guy at this juncture. He's looking like Joey Gallo, but minus like half the pop and the ability to walk. So, and we were saying trade for him. Right now I'm starting to think, maybe we've already got too many of those kind of guys in the team. So, I don't know. More and more I think back to that moment in the offseason where we were supposedly trying to get Marcell Ozuna, which certainly that kind of seems more like a thing that Ozuna was doing to try and manipulate the Braves and try to have them make him an offer more quickly, like make him an offer that was acceptable. It really seems like his agent was probably just trying to use us. But imagine him in this offense. It changes everything if you have a hitter like that, in this offense, someone who's much more consistent, someone who is a known product, who doesn't go on streaks. Ozuna is very consistent in terms of the hitting that he gets. So I was talking last year after the World Series, Ketel Marte is another one who's very consistent too. There's those kind of guys that I would love to have a guy on this team other than Randy who has a degree of consistency. That I think is our biggest offensive woe, is that there is no consistency. There is a pretty much a ceiling that everybody hits in terms of how long they can hit well. The only two at this juncture who definitely are consistent hitters, or at least consistent at the plate, would be Yandy and Randy. Yandy very much is consistent in terms of OBP. He's going to be a 270 hitter with a pretty high OBP. Generally, that's going to be the kind of thing that he does. He's going to be 400 OBP type seasons. So if that's what we know we're getting with him, fine. If Randy can continue this production, certainly Randy is defying all the prognosticators at this point. There were so many people claiming that he was going to be a 260 average hitter. He's defied all of those prognosticators at this juncture. He has hit so much better in his first month than that I don't think that's anywhere close to possible. What I would estimate, just based on his current production, even if he slumps pretty hard in the middle of the year, I don't think he's going to finish lower than 280. I say he's going to be, probably 280 average at the lowest end, with maybe 25-30 homers based on the current rate that he's going. So those two are great. If we can continue that kind of consistency with those two, wonderful. Meadows is supposed to be this consistent lefty power average bat. He has not shown that. We thought he was fixed for 5 minutes, and I don't know. He's been looking like 2019 or 2020 Austin Meadows at the plate lately, which is really scary because 2020 Austin Meadows was terrible. So, and then there's Lau, who is just so inconsistent, so unable to have a moment of consistency. He's good for a month, and then he slumps like crazy, and then he's back for a month, and then he slumps like crazy again. It's that's what's killing us. It's this complete lack of known products. What we think we know, we do not know. Everybody seems to, just have these moments of greatness and then complete slumpage for a good portion of the year, and that's what you see. And I don't think that's sustainable. I think certainly the team is absolutely built on defense and pitching. That's always been the core idea, very much like the Moneyball approach. But we played the Moneyball team today, and we lost. They played it better than us. So, Like it's kind of at the point where, you know, we got to change something, because I don't think we're going to go much further than Game 6 of the World Series if we don't.
Yeah, I agree with a lot of the points you made, and just something I wanted to respond to something you said a little while ago. I think we can all agree, Marcell Ozuna was never a realistic possibility, and I think he was just using us as a ploy in a contract thing. But there is a valid argument to be made that yes, the Rays should have looked to free agency to kind of shore up this offense, but in that conversation, you look back and you point to Eric Neander and you blame him for that 2-year, $12 million contract given to Yoshi Tsutsugo with the other options available, Nelson Cruz or anyone else. That, I think, is ultimately going to be where this offense falls short. They had money to spend, and they spent it on the wrong guy, and now we're left with the consequences.
Oh, certainly. The Yoshi contract is looking worse and worse by the day. I mean, he's at the point where I'm not even really factoring him into the conversation. He's a bench bat at best, probably looking at getting DFA'd as soon as Choi comes back. So,
and he's the second
yeah,
highest paid player on the team. Think about that. $7 million this year.
That's terrible. Terrible. And then certainly you also have to ask yourself, why is KK still here? like genuine question. You know, he's had a much better season at the plate than his usual. Like, I mean, in his last, I think they said I think he was 9 for 27 as of today in his last few plate appearances. So that's impressive. I mean, that's certainly good. He would have had a walk today if he didn't get shafted by the umps. So, I mean, There's definitely some argument to be made that he's been playing better than usual. Maybe he realizes that this might be his last season with the team, but he's the kind of guy, you trade him, you free up some money. Why exactly did we not move him in the offseason and try to make a more aggressive push for Ozuna? You know, or certainly for Cruz. I mean, Cruz is still floating around. Like he was actually a free agent like this year too. And I mean, admittedly, this year he was much more locked into the Twins because we didn't pull the trigger on him in 19. We didn't really go after him, which we should have. But you know, we could have made a more aggressive push. We could have said, you know, we could have offered him more money than the Twins did. You know, hey Nelson, come on down to Florida. It's much warmer down here. You know, your old bones are you're gonna get cold up there in Minnesota. We can make a better home for you down here. You know, get on a team that went further than the Twins. You know, the Twins are pretty big playoff chokers. Like we could have definitely offered him something like that even this year. So I'm not really sure what we were thinking in terms of some of these offensive moves that have been made. I don't know.
Yeah, what I would say about Kiermaier, like I'm definitely like, let's buckle up and watch this, because there was a lot made over the offseason, and I've gotten tired of the narrative that, KK has completely changed his game in the offseason, and he was off to like a 1 for 11 to start the year, goes on the injured list. But since then, we have actually seen that minimalistic approach that he's been talking about for so many years, that he's just going to start hitting singles up the middle, and he can start being that weapon on the base path that we've been waiting for. I think maybe that's what the Rays were seeing when they decided to keep him around, because it was either going to be him or Snell going out the door. And right now, I think they made the right decision, and he could be maybe one of those guys that gets this offense going, because he's been terrific since coming off the injured list.
If he wants to be a Ray for life, which he claims, then he's going to need to do that. Like, if that's what he wants, if he, you know, he certainly made this statement that he wants to be a Ray for life. He said that a good few times. If that's what he wants, if he can be a 270 hitter, basically lose the home run pop. We don't really need that. If we're, you know, certainly we have other guys that are supposed to be able to do that.
Right.
But if he can be a 270 hitter that hits clutch homers every once in a while and has a ridiculous OBP and OPS, I might be okay with him being a Ray forever if he takes a pay cut. He's going to have to take a pay cut, but certainly I would maybe be more okay with that. Like, I could see him maybe being a guy that we keep around longer, a guy that would be more inclined to keep around. But I just don't see any reason for us to do that other than if he does fix himself completely. If he completely turns himself around in terms of at the plate, because we have so many options that are floating around in both the minor leagues and the major leagues. Brett Phillips is kind of superfluous in terms of anything other than defensive replacement. I mean, yes, he's got the legendary World Series thing. Great, wonderful. You know, that's a one-time deal. I don't really think we're going to be seeing much of that from him on the daily. So he's more defensive replacement, base running help. He may still be around next year. Who knows? But really, the guys that are floating around in our minor league system, Josh Lowe is knocking at the door. He's got to come up eventually. I mean, he's like they rank him as one of our top prospects. It'd be foolhardy for us to not, give him opportunities or move him. So if KK wants to be Ray forever, he's going to have to change his approach and make himself into that person that needs to stay. Give us a reason to keep him. If he's hitting 240, we're not going to be keeping him. He's going to get moved.
Yeah, and I think bottom line, this has all been chalked up to what we've been saying all along, which is that this 2021 season is a bridge year, and ultimately, in my mind, if we're complacent with guys because we believe that the prospects that we have just aren't quite ready yet, or they need a little bit more time, I'm fine with that. Keep Kiermaier, keep Adames for this year, see where the team goes, and then when the season's over, you bite the bullet and you deal some guys and you go into 2022 with all the prospects that has been just talked about for the last 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, you start restructuring at that juncture. I mean, certainly, sure. I just don't want to see a year of competitive possibility wasted. You're looking at what could very well be a career year from Tyler Glasnow. You're looking at, Randy Arozarena potentially very likely to win Rookie of the Year. If he keeps this production up, there is almost no way he doesn't win Rookie of the Year. It would be an utter and complete shock if he lost at this point. I mean, really, his only competition, Akil Baddoo, Yermin Mercedes, those kind of guys who are more than likely going to be streaky type hitters who you probably won't be seeing them have these incredible years all the time. So I think it's more likely that he's going to win Rookie of the Year if he keeps up this production. So you're wasting a Rookie of the Year from him. You're wasting a potential Cy Young year from Glasnow. You're wasting, a plethora of opportunities if you just get too complacent. And I think that I would like to see more attempts. Certainly with the pitching staff, they don't seem to be complacent. With the pitching staff, they keep retooling, rejiggering just a little bit, trying to maneuver things around, move pieces. It seems like they're kind of willing to accept at this point that the Archer signing may have been a bit of a waste, and they're kind of positioning Fleming as the fifth starter. They're putting Patino over the taxi squad, having him come up and pitch. That gives me the thought process that they're not wanting to make this a bridge year in terms of pitching. So, the offense needs to do something here. We've got these games that they are wasting. I mean, these are classic games from Rich Hill. I mean, this is a vintage Rich Hill performance. This is like cream of the crop. This is the kind of thing that I used to watch at Dodger Stadium as a kid and not know what I had. Like when he was at Dodger Stadium, I would go to games. I'd be like, "Oh, Rich Hill's starting. Okay, it's not Kershaw, it's not Buehler. I don't care." And now I'm like glued to my seat watching this 41-year-old dude just completely massacre a very good lineup. Makes one mistake. Like that's the kind of thing that you can't waste those performances. We should have won this game 5-2 if we had actually used our opportunities. So, at what point does that change? You can't say that the bullpen's failings messed this game up because the bullpen was great. Lewis Head came out and pitched 2 incredible innings in relief. Even Strickland, Hunter Strickland's career has been resurrected. How? The necromancer Kyle Snyder has somehow managed to resurrect another seemingly dead career. I mean, this guy is now looking like his old self. I mean, like we're wasting opportunities, and you can't have that. Even in a supposed bridge year, it doesn't have to be that way. In terms, like we could go far even in a bridge year. As talented as this organization is, they have the ability to go much further than just, maybe like a first-round exit in the playoffs, like a wild card exit. They could run it all the way back. They have the potential to do so. And we've seen their biggest threats in the West and in the East exposed. The Yankees are looking horrible. The Dodgers had an absolutely horrendous night last night. These are the kind of things that you're seeing early signs that there is more of a vacuum in terms of like who's going to be the definitive contenders at this moment. There is definitely a possible sea change that could happen. A bridge year doesn't have to be a bridge year, is more what I'm saying.
I get your point. I really do. Over the last 4 games, the Rays have batted .083 with runners in scoring position, and they're bottom 5 in the majors with runners in scoring position. I think if that one thing changes, we're talking about a completely different team. So while I do agree with your points and they all are valid, I think let's just give this a little bit of time, see if some of these guys can figure it out, and maybe by June or July, our minds will be changed a little bit.
Yeah, I sound, I'm really beating the drum of the LA fan. You can tell at this point that I am from Los Angeles. I have been around the Dodgers and the Angels my entire life. Like this is what a Dodgers/Angels kind of person sounds like.
I gotcha.
Basically, if they're not going to produce, like there needs to be a fire lit under them. That's maybe it's a bit of a big market ideology, but I think that there is a merge that can be had between the big market thinking and the small market thinking, certainly.
Yeah, I do agree. You got to find the happy medium, and yes, the Rays may be a little bit complacent for your liking, and certainly a lot of other people right now too. But yeah, let's just trust the process, and if this thing is really going south, you will see moves made at the trade deadline one way or the other, and I guess that's really all we can do is wait for. So hoping the team turns around. Seth, thank you so much for the call again. It was a great one as always. I love the points that you bring to the show, and certainly a different perspective, which is always needed. So thank you for that, and I thank you for taking the time tonight.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity as well. I mean, and hopefully my my LA exasperation didn't come out too much, but I appreciate the time. So I hope you guys have a good rest of the evening, and that maybe tomorrow we can turn this around. We got Waka on the mound. Let's give it another shot, I guess. Run it back.
Absolutely. Looking forward to it. Have a good one, Seth.
You too. Bye-bye.
All right, and that was Seth in Los Angeles. Seth, again, thank you so much for the call. At this point, we're going to take another short break. When we return, we'll wrap up our discussion of tonight's 2-1 loss, and then after that, we will discuss tomorrow's game and some of the injuries that players that will be coming back, and then we'll get you up on and out of here. So we are going to take a short break. We'll be back in a couple minutes. Don't go anywhere.
Hey Rays fans, William will be right back. We're in a commercial break, so don't touch that dial. Remember, you can call us internationally toll-free at 877-566-1020 or tweet us your thoughts at WHBC Official. Also, we'd like you to stay tuned for William's other podcasting projects at speaker.com/user/WHBC.
HBC. And at 11:12 on this Monday night, we return to this Rays postgame edition of the William Haynes Show. About an hour into the program, we're going to try and put a little bit of a wrap on this and finish this discussion of tonight's 2-1 loss. I don't think it would do it justice if I didn't go one by one through the lineup, though, just because the frustrating missed opportunities, and we'll get all that continued under that umbrella of discussion. So we gave you the order, the lineup, and the batting order and all those things. So we'll start with Randy Arozarena, who led off today in right field. He goes 3 for 4 with a run scored, no walks, and a strikeout. His average is back over 300 at 301 and on base at 356 and a slugging of 446. So I think all of his slash lines right now is where you would want them to be. I think it really is kind of amazing that he's batting over 300 right now, because there are times where he has looked kind of bad. He's certainly getting much different pitching than he got last year. He's getting fastballs up and in and outside, and a guy that loves to swing at fastballs, he's been chasing some of those. I think he's gotten much better at laying off of the breaking ball, and he was facing a pretty tough lefty in Sean Manaea, and finishes his day 2 for 3 against him, and obviously 3 for 4 overall. And with him in the leadoff spot, him hitting those singles allowed some runs or some rallies, I guess, to start, and they mostly were not able to finish those rallies. He did score the game's only run in the first inning. He hit a leadoff single off of Manaea, so that's something we always look at as a leadoff hitter. Are you working lengthy at bats? Are you making it difficult for the opposing starter? And most importantly, are you getting on base? And he checks checks all those boxes. He in a 3-2 count gets a fastball, kind of middle, and not just him, but a lot of other guys in this lineup, where they're not hitting is just because they're swinging through fastballs, and that's been a concern with the Arozarena. That was not the case tonight. His ground ball rate is as high as just about anyone in the major leagues, but this time he was finding the gaps and getting on base with them, so that was great as well. And of course, his only out of the game was a strikeout, because the strikeout rate is at about 33% or so. But you like certainly what he put up. The leadoff single, as I said, came across to score on the Austin Meadows sac fly. Hit a 1-out single in the third, moved to second base on a walk, struck out on as part of a kind of 3-up and 3-down inning that we'll talk about in a little bit, and then hit another 1-out single in the 8th inning. And he ended up moving all the way to third base. The Rays, they got the tying run tonight, only 90 feet away with only 1 out, and obviously they were not able to pull through at that juncture. Yandy Diaz, he goes 0 for 2 tonight with 2 walks, 1 strikeout. His average down to 235 and on base of 402. So he is doing pretty much exactly what he has been doing all year, which is he's seeing a lot of pitches, working good at bats, and getting on base via the walk more times than not. Obviously would love to see him start with extra base hits, but I think really that discussion is not to be had. This is the player that Yandy is right now, and he's kind of morphed his game. He's got one of the best batting eyes in baseball, and so you don't complain when he gets on base, and half of his plate appearances on the night. He grounds out in the first inning, but it was a hard line drive off the calf of Sean Manaea that allows Arozarena to get over to second base. So I did move a runner over. He walked in the third to move Arozarena to second, so that's another good situation. So all of his outs pretty much were productive. The one that you say that was not good on Yandy's part, it was a failed hit and run in the 5th inning. So Joey Wendell worked a 1-out bases empty walk. Arozarena strikes out, so it's man at first with 2 outs, and Yandy Diaz on a pitch that was well inside at the hands. It was obvious that it was a hit and run because he would not have swung at that otherwise, but the swing was way late. It was not able to put the ball in play, and also credit to Athletics catcher Sean Murphy for making a good throw to second, and they throw out Joey Wendell as the Rays go 1 for 2 tonight on stolen base attempts. The only other one was Arozarena swiping third base in the first inning that allowed them to have a runner at third with less than 2 outs, which put the sacrifice play on. So that's something I meant to talk about earlier in the program. A lot was made in spring training about how guys are going to bunt to get on base against the shift, and how they want to maybe do more hit and runs and more stolen bases, some of those more small ball things that have kind of fallen away in the midst of what has become known as kind of the Moneyball theory, if you read the book, or I'm sure most of you have seen the movie if you're Rays fans, and how fitting is it that the Oakland A's are in town during this time. But yeah, stolen bases are kind of a thing of the past, and of course bunting and all those things are as well, but I've long been clamoring for that to make a return, and I think it has a lot of hidden value, and it looks like maybe we're going back to that. There was another bunt attempt from Manuel Margot. I think there was another one by I can't remember who it was, but he bunted foul for strike one, and then Matt Chapman at third base came way up, which took the bunt play off. But they tried to go hit and run multiple times, and they were able to steal a bag as well. So in a situation right now where nothing is going right for you offensively, not only do you need to be shaking things up offensively with the lineup, but also your philosophy as well. And they do not have an extra base hit in over 2 games. The last 2 games, no extra base hits, period. So when you're not hitting doubles and home runs, yes, you're going to have to bunt guys over and steal bases, because if all you're doing is walking and hitting a couple of singles a night, that's not going to score a lot of runs, and the Rays only scratch across 1 tonight. So that's honestly something I would like to see continue, and maybe just if they execute those moments a little bit better, like Yandy Diaz, the hit and run, bad break. Because a pitch in on the knuckles like that's not a good pitch for hit and run. It actually works really well for the catcher. It's kind of like a pitch out almost in an adverse way. So again, it's all in execution, and you catch a bad break there, but they certainly had their spots in the rest of the game. And then in the 8th inning for Yandy, like he did in the 3rd, with Randy Arozarena on first, he walked. So with men on base, it's kind of the duality of Yandy Diaz, right? Because with men on base, you want to see him put the ball in play and get hits, and maybe not just move a guy over to second, but maybe to third, or have him come home. But no, with men on first, even with men on first, he'll walk, and all that does is just give you first and second. And with the way the rest of the lineup is playing right now, that doesn't really do you a whole heck of a lot, but I don't think you blame Yandy for that. You blame the guys hitting behind him. Because first and second with 1 or no outs, that should be a situation that you're converting and cashing in runs on, and they're just not doing that right now. And you can't ask Yandy Diaz to change what he's doing and doing well just because the men hitting behind him are not doing their job. So I think that's important to keep in mind. And those were his 4 plate appearances tonight. Austin Meadows in the 3 spot. Maybe you want to give him, I don't know what you want to call it, just the L of the night, or I hate to say like least valuable player or whatever, but or even what used to be known as the GOAT before the definition of that term changed a little bit. But he was the guy that really cost the Rays in some big spots tonight. Played a fine left field. There was not a whole lot of moments for him over there, but he goes 0 for 3 with a run knocked in, no walks, and a strikeout. His average is down to 224. He is getting on base 35% of the time, and a slugging percentage a point higher than Randy Arozarena's at 447. He's tied for the team lead in home runs right now with 4. He's also got some doubles to go along with it. But something I was going to try and bring up to Seth, but the moment it kind of passed, that with Meadows right now, and this is clear to anyone that watches a lot of Rays games, and Seth correctly mentioned, we thought that he was going to be back early in the season. Of course, he hit home runs in both of the first 2 games of the year, but the only pitch that he really does damage on is down and in. And literally any other part of the zone, including middle, is just either swing and misses or pops straight up into the air. And that was the case in multiple times in this game, including in the 8th inning, where the Rays had runners at second and third and 1 out. And he just pops it straight up. I mean, he gets a pitch that he should be crushing, a double off the wall that gives you a 1-run lead. But instead, that certainly was not the case. So we'll look at that pitch now. A 94-mile-an-hour fastball from the lefty Jake Diekman, middle, and he just popped it straight up. And that's, I don't know, again, I'm not like an inside baseball guy. I've not played at that level, but that's a pitch you got to hit with runners at second and third with 1 out. Even if you do what he did in the 1st inning and just hit it into the outfield, you're tying the game in the 8th inning. That's what you need. But it's just the way he swings, because, again, that pitch down and in, that with that being his pitch, that's his approach at the plate. Like Brandon Lau, he undercuts the baseball every time. And on a pitch middle, you don't need to be undercutting it. Just hit it at the middle, barrel it up and hit a single. But I guess he just wants to launch the ball every time and hit those home runs. But in that situation, that's not what you need. I would prefer to see an Arozarena type approach or a Yandy Diaz approach or even Kiermaier right now. Just hit even if you don't square it up, just hit the top half of the baseball and get a hard ground ball and score some runs. But instead, in the most frustrating moment of the night, say for maybe the strike 3 call to Kiermaier, He pops it straight up in the air, and then Manny Margot squanders his opportunity after that. And you go from second and third with one out to walking away with no runs scored. And in a 2-1 loss, that is so frustrating. That's really the microcosm, like I always try to say, in a game, you get that one moment, that was there, that was the winner-take-all moment, and they wasted it there because Meadows' approach at the plate right now, simply put, is flawed. And I don't know where you go from here. Obviously, he's going to continue to bat at the top of the order, but what are you going to do when he's coming up with men on base and he's just popping it up every time? I mean, it's Major League pitchers know. They know not to pitch him down and in because that's the only thing he can hit. He's going and trying to undercut the baseball every time. So what do you do when he's trying to undercut it? You just pitch him up in the zone. And he's either striking out because he doesn't make contact at all, or he's hitting that real bottom part of the baseball and popping up or flying out into shallow in the shallow outfield. So that's my rant on Meadows. That's where it stands, and it doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. And it's kind of a doomsday scenario, but it's concerning, to say the least. In the cleanup spot tonight, it was Manuel Margot, and he played a pretty good center field. He goes 1 for 4 tonight, no walks, no strikeouts. His average is up to 232, and on base of 289, and is slugging above average, I think, right now at 391. He's going to be the Rays' cleanup hitter against left-handed starters. Or at least it appears that way right now. I mean, Yandy should not be a cleanup hitter. Mike Brasso, a guy who batted 5th tonight, but has batted cleanup against lefties before. So Margot, who had a really hot start to the season, and I think we're all still very high on, he squandered some opportunities as well. He goes 0 for 2 with runners in scoring position tonight, so he squandered those opportunities just as much as Meadows, so I think he deserves just as much of the blame. He singled with the bases empty and 2 outs in the first inning, so that's where his offensive production on the night came from. With runners at first and second in the third inning, he flew out to right, so squandered that opportunity. That was against Sean Manaea. He started off 0-2, including a changeup at 82 that I just took middle, and a guy, I guess, that likes to hunt fastballs a little bit, which he did in that at-bat as well. And he got a sinker that was a bit up and into him, but one that you think he can hit if he could just pull it. But instead, somehow, I don't know how he does that, on the pitch kind of up and in, and he goes opposite field. So that was, I guess, that approach and that at-bat. He grounded out in a that's what one of the bunts I was thinking about. He tried to bunt to get on in the 6th, and it was a well executed bunt, but absolutely well played by the A's catcher Sean Murphy, and he's nearly thrown out at first base. So he's probably the best bunter the Rays have in their lineup, or even on their team. And then in the big moment in the 8th inning, with runners at second and third and 2 outs after the Meadows pop-up, and he grounded out to second base, and Jed Lowry, of course, was all over the field tonight. And in that moment, it was against Diekman, of course, on a 1-1 count, and he gets a fastball in on the hands. And obviously that's not a pitch you have to swing at. He swung through a fastball middle on the first pitch of the at-bat, so credit that he at least went for it. And that's another thing, whether you're talking about Brandon Lau, Willy Adames, or even Austin Meadows, they're getting these fastballs middle part of the plate on the first pitch, and they're just taking them. And when you do that every time, pitchers know that, okay, well, you can start out on these guys 0-1 very easily because they're not going to go after it. And so that's where a slump, you just fall deeper into it, because like Dave Will says on the broadcast all the time, when guys are in a slump, it feels like when they come to the plate, they're already down 0-2. And not only that, but sometimes they're just doing it to themselves because they're taking good pitches. That's the big issue with Willy Adames, is he takes good pitches early in at-bats for strikes, and then when he finds himself down 0-2 or 1-2 in the count, he's chasing sliders in the dirt or curveballs out of the zone because he's down 0-2 because he wasted those good pitches. So, pitch selection is huge. And so that was an issue for Margot tonight. Swung and missed on good pitches or took them for strikes, and then on pitches that he should be taking, and that wasn't a 2-strike count. On 1-1, a pitch in on the hands probably should be taking that, especially when Diekman was giving you all fastballs, because even if it's 1-2, he's probably going to come back with another fastball because it seemed like that's all he was throwing in his appearance tonight. in the 8th inning. So a frustrating approach right now, and I very rarely am I this critical, but it's hard not to be frustrated when the team is 11-12 and should be much better, and was so close to a win. And not only that, but as Seth had mentioned, and I was saying as well, squandered an absolute gem from the pitching staff tonight, and we really should be discussing a win tonight. And because of very frankly quite put offensive ineptitude, and not only that, but from guys that are supposed to be carrying the water in this lineup that are just playing poor baseball at the plate right now. So I don't know how it changes. We've seen Randy Arozarena do it already, and maybe it's just going to be like 2020 where the offense is relying solely on one guy, and that's obviously not sustainable, and we knew that going into this year that they were going to need more. But like guys like Meadows and Brandon Lau, right now, they just look like flawed baseball players, and I don't know where you go from there. So the top of the lineup, Arozarena and Diaz were getting on base, and then your 3 and 4 hitters just completely, excuse my language, but just pissed away good opportunities. And so that's where you come away with a 2-1 loss tonight. Batting in the 5 spot, it was Mike Brasso, and he's in a bit of a slump right now. It seems like he's going to come out of it and then kind of goes back down. But Orestes Estrada has been saying this a lot lately. Brasso just works spectacular at bats, and for that, I think he deserves some time in the lineup, certainly over Brandon Lau right now. I wouldn't pull Wendell yet, but I think with Lau struggling at second base, Brasso, just put him there, righties, lefties, whoever. He goes 0 for 3 tonight with no walks or no strikeouts, an average that's down to 208, but the other slash lines are good. An on base, well, relatively speaking, an on base of 283 and a slugging of 396. So he popped up with a man on first in the first. He popped up to Lowry again to lead off the 4th, so was undercutting the baseball a little bit there. Grounded out in a 1-2-3 in the 6th, and then went down looking to start the 9th, in which was a frustrating at-bat, to say the least. Or no, I apologize. That was not his at-bat. That was Kiermaier's at-bat, so let me clear that up. So Brasso just goes 0 for 3. He's pinch hit to start the 9th inning. And we'll discuss Kiermaier. He just strikes out looking, and that was that frustrating at bat where on a 3-2 count he took a pitch legitimately. And I tend to never blame the umpires on a game, and they certainly they're not responsible for the final score. It's Meadows and Margot squandering those opportunities, but that was ball 4. And that was to lead off the inning, and you're only down 1 run. It's not a stretch to say that this game is completely different if they have Kiermaier on first, as Seth had very well mentioned. So I like the at-bat from Kiermaier. It snapped a 7-game hitting streak for him, and I'm loving his approach at the plate right now. I slammed him to start the year, and since coming off the injured list with that, I think, quad issue or hamstring, whatever, hip, he has looked nothing short of spectacular. What's usually going to be like a 9-hitter for you, and plays a spectacular center field if he can hit 270, 280, and stop just trying to hit home runs every at bat. I mean, that's a lineup changer, no doubt. So that was tough, and I guess ultimately ended up being a good move to pinch hit for Brasso, because Kiermaier really should have worked a walk in that at bat, and it was a spectacular AB against the A's closer Lou Trevino, who was throwing like 97. So it's hard to walk against a guy like that. In my book, Kevin Kiermaier did in the 9th. Batting in the 6th spot, the DH, Brandon Lau, 0 for 4, no walks, 2 strikeouts, 158 average on the year, 281 on base. Struck out looking to start the 2nd, and that's an at-bat that I would like to discuss, because that was a frustrating one to watch, no doubt. He started off 3-0 against Manaea. Then, obviously, on 3-0, took a pitch kind of middle in, which is fine. You never bellyache about a guy taking 3-0, and it's not really his call. He's usually getting the sign from someone anyway. Then gets a fastball kind of middle, and swings through it for strike 2. Fouls off that same pitch, so he's not able to square it up twice in a row. And then on a pitch down and away on the corner, Sean Barber rings him up for strike 3. So that was frustrating, to say the least. And then after that, he flew out to center with nobody on in the 4th, struck out swinging to start the 7th, and then they let him hit in the 9th inning, and he grounds out to Lowry. So another tough night for him as his average continues to plummet, and where he bats in the lineup continues to fall as well, where he bats 6th tonight, which I never thought I would see the day. I was beating the drum consistently this year for him to be the everyday cleanup man, but right now I'm not sure how I could possibly endorse that decision. Batting in the 7th spot, and who had a pretty good game, Mikey Zunino, and played spectacular behind the plate as he always does, catching a difficult foul ball and blocking some good pitches as well. He strikes out swinging in the 2nd, hits a really nice single in the 4th, and if he could just hit more darn singles, he would be terrific. So that was good. Grounded out with nobody on in the 7th, and then he was pinch hit for by Yoshi Tsutsugo in the 9th, who Yoshi's always either striking out or grounding out to first base, and he did ground out to first base, except no one was there where he grounded it to. Got it right between Lowry and Olsen over there, between first and second, and is able to get on base. So he narrowly avoids being the final out, but really should have been in my mind. And it moves over to second base, for the tying run, and at that point they pinch run him for Phillips, and Mejia flew out on it after that. So a good game for Zunino, offense and defensively. Willy Adames tonight, he goes 0 for 3 with a walk and a strikeout. His average is down to 183 and on base at 227. So he's been struggling, definitely, to say the least. He flew out to right to end the 2nd in a 1-2-3. Flew out to left with a man on in the 4th. In one of those flyouts, I think he almost took out. It was really well struck off the bat. A fastball towards the bottom of the zone. And he has been hitting some hard flyouts. So I'm a little higher on what Adames is doing than maybe Seth, but I know there's a lot of people frustrated with him right now. And he has been very spectacular defensively this year. So I'm going to be patient on Adames, and there's a reason he's hitting 8th. He's not supposed to be carrying the water for this lineup. Again, if the 3 and 4 hitters do their job tonight, we're not talking about any of that stuff. So Adames strikes out in a 1-2-3 in the 7th, and they do let him hit in the 9th against the righty Trevino. And he does work a walk, a spectacular at-bat worked by Adames in perhaps one of the game's biggest moments. He starts off 2-0, then takes a couple strikes, works the count full, and then takes a fastball low and outside on the corner. Basically the same pitch that Barber rung up Kiermaier on. And with 2 outs in the 9th and your team's down a run, that's a pretty gutsy take by Adames. And I certainly give him credit for doing so. And it was a nice at-bat and moved the line to Mejia. He pinch hit. So the 9-hitter was Joey Wendell. He goes 0 for 1 on the night with a walk. He turned 31 years old today and playing with his former team, Oakland A's. I like that he was batting 9th, and it seems like the last handful of games, the 9-hitter is either leading off the inning or batting 2nd, and I think it's perfect philosophy. It's something I've been calling for pretty much all of last year. Instead of putting Zunino in the 9th spot, who's either hitting home runs or striking out, why don't we put Wendell down there, because he's getting on base more than just about anyone, or at least was before he's cooled off. And then you turn him over to who is now your leadoff hitter, Rosarena, and then you're really working with something. And that happened once. He struck out to start the 3rd, and then it worked a leadoff walk in the 5th. So twice in both of his at bats, the 9-hitter, he came up to start the inning, which obviously was the intention there. Worked the leadoff walk, and then he was part of that failed hit and run in the 5th, where it was just not the right pitch to do it on, and so they catch a bad break, and he was caught stealing. If Yandy Diaz had put it in play, maybe it's a different story, or it just swung a little earlier, but instead he's thrown out at 2nd, and that was his day. He got pinch hit for in the 8th inning to lead off the inning by Mejia. Mejia strikes out there, and then for the final out in the 9th with the tying runner Phillips at second base, so a single would tie the game easily, and he just kind of pops it up, and it's a fly out to left field on a 1-0 count. He got a fastball kind of middle away, because he must have been batting lefty in that at bat against the righty Trevino, and that's a tough break there. This year Mejia was 400 with runners in scoring position, so if there's anyone you want in that moment, probably him, and just didn't come through in that particular spot, so that was unfortunate. The reason why I'm not as high on not as hard on him as the other guys is just because he's actually shown some success in those situations, whereas the other guys we've mentioned just have not, and they just prove that they're not going to be able to. So, but I know I'm very negative. I wish I haven't been so negative, but That's just my feeling right now, and I know most kind of agree with me. It's just, I think where the frustration comes from is because you feel like they're wasting an opportunity, and I thought April would be a good month for them to get ahead, and I know, I think Baseball Reference still has them at about a 65% chance to make the postseason, and they're only 3 games out of first right now, but whether it's the Blue Jays, the Yankees, or God forbid even the Red Sox, one of these teams is going to get hot, and they're going to take a division lead. And if the Rays don't get their act together, they're going to find themselves in a position where, they're 8 games out of first, and it's too late to do anything. And the reason being is you pissed away, again, games that you could have easily won because you had opportunities time and time again with runners in scoring position. Again, they go 0 for 5 tonight. They get their top 5 in the majors with plate appearances with runners in scoring position. They're better than anyone at getting guys at second or third, but they're bottom 5 with batting average with runners in scoring position. So they're getting the most opportunities and they're squandering the most opportunities. In the last 4 games, they're batting .083 with runners in scoring position. They're on a 2 for 24 stretch. And you can only push your pitching staff so far. I mean, they're wasting very good defensive and pitching performances, and you're not always going to get those. I mean, you hold your opponent, you hold the best team in the American League to 2 runs, and you lose the game. That to me is so frustrating. If they gave up 8 runs and they lose 8-1, then it's just like, oh, geez, I mean, this team is lost at sea. Where do they start putting this thing together? But right now, it's just, the Rays have been so good in 1-run games, and so far this year, I think they're 2-4, and just so many wasted opportunities. And this is where the team fell short in the postseason a year ago. And you want to talk about this team's ceiling? That's their batting average with runners in scoring position. However good that is as far as this team will go. Because if they're not doing well, they're not going anywhere. But if they can just convert and start hitting a little bit better in that regard, they're going to win a heck of a ton of games. But right now, they're not. So this team could be much better than 11-12. But because of everything that I mentioned, right now, they're just not. So with that being said, we will turn the page, take a deep breath in and out. We got a game to play tomorrow, and with the Rays being, 23 games in, there's like 139 games left to play, so we're certainly not out of it yet, folks. But we do have maybe some, reinforcements are on the way. For Mark Tompkin on Twitter before the game, Kevin Cash and all those guys doing their Zoom room spots. G-Man Choi getting arthroscopic knee surgery in spring training. He's at the alternate site now, and it is announced that he will join AAA Durham to get at-bats when the season starts next week. Anyone that's followed this story, I think that's a good call. He did not get a chance to work out a lot in the offseason because of COVID restrictions as far as gymnasiums and such, where he spent the offseason in South Korea. And so he came into spring training a little bit more out of shape than he should be. And just simply put, it's not an attack against the guy. He's a little bit of a bigger dude. And he does things at first base that not very many big men can do. And it's because of his conditioning and his flexibility and all that. So he came in out of shape. It was, Cash admitted it. Everyone admitted it. Not potentially to any fault of Choi, but it was just the cards that he was dealt. And so after the knee surgery, not only do you have to jump the hurdle of, rehabbing him from that, but Cash also mentioned he's just got to get conditioned. I mean, that 6-week spring training, he's not going to be in AAA for 6 weeks, but he missed pretty much that entire process that all these other guys got leading into the regular season. So this is not a situation where he's doing a 3-game rehab assignment. I'm thinking maybe, a week or 2 in AAA, because I know he's been doing stuff at the alternate site, but you got to get game ready. So that's my expectation. The timetable all along was for him to be mid to late May, and so I think May 5th is Durham's first game. So if he plays again a week or 2 at AAA, that would keep him on that timetable, and that would help the team a ton. I don't know exactly what you do at first base because you've got 3 guys right now that can play first. I don't know if they decide to cut Yoshi loose. That's not a conversation at this point I would like to have, but we'll certainly keep that in consideration. But a guy that can hit a leadoff, that can hit cleanup, You talk about runners in scoring position. Ji-Man Choi might be like the most clutch hitter that this roster has. So maybe he's the missing link, and maybe that's where things start to get turned around a little bit. And really the only position player that has missed significant time this year. So he'll be playing minor league baseball to start next week as he looks to get ready for to join the team this season. And also on the pitching side, Colin McHugh on the 10-day IL with a back injury has started throwing. He has not looked good at any point this year, so I don't know how important that is. Cody Reed with a thumb injury will start soon. There was, I guess you would say, rumblings that the thumb issue was connected maybe to thoracic outlet syndrome. That was not confirmed, but that was kind of what Archer dealt with, kind of some numbing, tingling feeling in the hand, and it's the nerve issue that runs all the way through your arm and into the shoulder. I thought it was a blister thing, but maybe there was some numbness there, whatever, on the thumb of your throwing hand, so that's something that needs to be right. And we were told it was the same issue he had last year, so whatever that ends up being. But they're both in line to return soon, according to Tompkin. And Peter Fairbanks with the shoulder rotator cuff issue, he was put on the IL on April 9th. He continues to improve ahead of schedule. He's been throwing for a couple weeks, so a member that a bullpen, they can have him back. Castillo is really the only guy that they have right now that is part of that group. So if he comes back, that changes the dynamic. The Rays have not had to use their a bullpen really a lot in the last 5-6 days or so, but certainly a guy that they would love to have back and could maybe change the dynamic a little bit on how the pitching is used. So that's all we know right now. And then guys that, are coming back after the All-Star break, Nick Anderson, Chaz Rowe, Carlin Poche, I think is a dark horse guy that could come back, who had Tommy John prior to last season. So, and then also Chris Archer, who the Rays recently said is a couple weeks away, but again, that's not going to be to return to the starting rotation. They're going to have to rebuild him up probably from the ground. So whether that's 2 or 3 innings at a time, it's going to be a process with Archer, and we'll just have to see where things go from there. And with that being said, we turn the page to tomorrow's game at 7:10 at Tropicana Field. The American League best Oakland A's at 15-8 will play the 11-12 Tampa Bay Rays. It will be the righty Frankie Montas going for the Athletics, and the right-hander Michael Wacha and the 5-starter going for the Rays. So we'll begin with the Rays pitching side first. Wacha, the 29-year-old right-hander, is 1-1 on the year with a .435 earned run average. His last time out against the Kansas City Royals, he goes 5 2/3, allowing 3 runs on 5 hits and a no decision, gives up a walk and 1 strikeout. Pitched well to start. Had pitched, I think, like 3 perfect innings or something along those lines, and then just he throws the cutter most and was just catching way too much of the plate, and the Royals were making solid contact. So the Athletics being a power hitting lineup, he can't make those same mistakes, but that's who Wacha is. He does get a lot of the plate, so I'm thinking probably around the 5-inning mark unless he just really catches a groove. I will say the Athletics had a problem with swing and misses on like 85-mile-an-hour fastballs from Hill, and they were chasing his curveball more than any team I've really seen, save for maybe that Yankees start. So maybe this is a lineup that you can take advantage of right now. But for Wacha, he's your 5-starter, so typically you have to win in spite of him, not because of him. So the hope is maybe 5 innings of just 1 or 2 runs allowed, and the bullpen certainly is in good shape. They went with the B pen tonight with Lewis Head pitching 2 innings scoreless. Obviously there was that play where Wendell should have, or Adames also should have caught the pop fly from Kemp to end the 7th inning. Instead he doesn't, and with 2 outs, Elvis Andrus, who is at first base with 2 outs, ends up coming all the way home, but they do make the throw home just in time. So I don't think it would have been an earned run, but Lewis Head has yet to allow a run in 3 innings of work so far this season, and has continued to impress. Fell behind in the count a little more than you like, but he pitched fine, and they used Strickland as well, so all B bullpen guys. If it's a save situation, Castillo, we've been told, is available. Diego Castillo has not pitched since Wednesday when he blew the save against the Royals. He was on the IL for a day because of adverse effects to the COVID-19 vaccine. He's been warming up a couple times, including tonight. He's warmed up the last 2 days, I should say. So I think he's fine. Just the situation has not necessarily called for him. There may be a little bit of rust because of that. If he pitches tomorrow, it'll be almost a full week since he's entered a game, but we'll have to see from there. Kittredge would be available, Jeffrey Springs, Ryan Thompson, so they could go 4 guys pitching 1 inning, so you would only need, like I said, 5 from Waka, and then maybe 1 inning from each of those guys the rest of the way. So that would be my expectation, and then if they're losing, they've got Trevor Richards who can get depth. Strickland could pitch, I assume. He would be pitching 3 days straight, so I don't know, but they could certainly try it. And then, Kittredge is a guy that could come in when you're winning or losing. Thompson as well, but Springs and maybe Castillo, more of your high leverage guys. And then on the athletic side, Frankie Montas, the 28-year-old right-hander, is 2-1 on the season with a .675 earned run average. In his last start against the Minnesota Twins, in a no decision somehow, he pitches just 4 innings, allows 6 runs on 9 hits, 3 home runs allowed. In 18 and 2/3 innings, he's allowed 5 home runs on the year. No walks, though, 4 strikeouts and 76 pitches, and he's thrown a couple 100 pitch starts, so he's stretched out to go. He pitched 6 innings shutout against the Tigers, 6 innings of a run against the Astros, and then had a rough time, 2 2/3 of 7 runs against the Dodgers, but that was in his first start of the year and might not have been fully ready to go at that time. So I'm not seeing anything that's like very dynamic. They did a good job of getting to Minaya, did the Rays tonight. They got a run in the first inning, and they were making him throw pitches. He threw 100 pitches over just 5 innings, so if they can do that against Montas tomorrow, they'll be fine. There has never really been a time where the Rays weren't getting base runners and working lengthy at-bats. It's just that they're squandering scoring opportunities. So they're going to get plenty against Montas. The walk number is not huge. He's given up just as many walks as he has home runs. So that's something to think about. But, a guy that, again, could go 4 or 5 innings or so. And the A's used their A bullpen, I believe, last night. By the way, it was former Ray, I'm blanking on his name, but I'll pull him up here. He was optioned to the alternate training site, so we won't get to see him. He was a guy that I thought that we would get to see, but we won't. I can't remember his name, but Sergio Romo is also on the roster, but seems to pitch in kind of low leverage spots. So we'll see from that. Maybe we'll see the former Ray and all those things. So that's pretty much it. Who knows if they win or if they lose? Oakland's a good team, but there's a lot to not feel so good about on the Rays side right now. But who knows? They could win 8-0, and we'll feel perfectly fine with what they're doing. No extra base hits in the last 2 games. You think maybe that would change? So the Rays seem to be better when they're getting some home runs and some doubles, so we would like to see that. Thank you for everyone who tuned in tonight. We'd love to take some more calls tomorrow. We'd like to thank Seth for taking the time to give us a call tonight. It was a dandy, as always, Seth, and maybe hear from some of you people tomorrow. 7:10's first pitch will be on the air after the game, and as always, we will speak to you then.
Sports Radio 101.9 FM and Sports Radio 66. The Fan.
HBC.